when my son was, I think, maybe 6. He was 6 or 7, and it was just after he had had an incident at school where I received a call while I was at work, and I was working at the time for the Detroit Public Library. And I received a call that there was an incident at the school and I needed to get to the school right away. When I got to the school, my son was meeting with a psychologist. And I was confused. And I'm like, well, why does my son need to meet with a psychologist? I have health insurance. If he needs any kind of medical care, I'm his mother. I get to determine that, not the school. Well, come to find out, there was a skeleton that had been introduced into the classroom. It was right around Halloween, or right before Halloween. They had introduced a skeleton into the classroom, and the other little kids, students that were sitting at the table with my son, began to talk about the skeleton, and a little girl, a white girl, identified the skeleton's private parts, or the missing private parts, as his pee-pee or pee-wee, wee-wee, something. And my son corrected her, because I always taught him to use the correct language when it came to his private parts. And he said, no, that's a peen. That would be where the penis goes. And because my son said that to this little white girl, she got upset. She told the teacher, and the teacher disciplined my son, sent him to the principal's office, where the principal decided that he should meet with a psychologist to determine why he used the word, in her mind, pee-pee, pee-wee, wee-wee, whatever the little girl said, to identify a private part on the skeleton. Well, let me tell you, after I finished with that school, the state of Michigan changed the way the curriculum allows the skeletons to be introduced into the classroom. That they have to have a conversation with the students. They have to explain what this skeleton is doing in the classroom. They have to explain what the skeleton represents. And they have to have a learning conversation around the skeleton. Well, that happened to my son. He was 6. He was in the first grade. Had just started the first grade and was already. Well, that happened to my son. He was 6. He was in the first grade. Had just started the first grade and was already being villainized, because a little white girl said that he said something that bothered her, even though she said it and my son corrected her. So right after that, I think the PBS documentary was being aired on Emmett Till. And I sat down with my son and we watched it, and we had a conversation about what happened to Emmett Till and the importance of him choosing language when talking with white children in school, in public, at a function, wherever I took him, that would always enable him to be safe. And that's the same types of conversations that we have to have with our children today. Even though my son is 28 years old, thank God he's 28 years old. Thank God for 8 years of service in the Army, mostly overseas. Thank God. And thank our ancestors for bringing him home whole, in his right mind, strong and capable. But we still have so much work to do with our youth now, that they need to understand that the America that they feel they deserve, and that we know we deserve, has not yet given us what we deserve. And that's safety. Safety to just be us, to show up as our authentic selves in every space, right? I know I'm on a little bit of a tangent, but I don't know if you all know anyone who was prosecuted because of being in relationship with a white woman. But my cousin was actually imprisoned at 16 years old for dating a white girl, and she was 15. And her parents pressed charges, and he was convicted as a rapist at 16 years old, and he was put in prison, and he still has to live with that. I'm in my 50s. I think my cousin is, if not 50, he's almost 50. This is something I think we have to discuss with our children: racial hatred and the effects that it can have over our lives, long-lasting effects. And we also need to talk about how we continue to seek justice for our ancestors who are no longer here, and for those who have gotten away with murder. Because that's what America has done. They have gotten away with murder. I don't know my grandparents on my mother's side, not because they didn't love me, not because they didn't want to know me, but because both of them died in their early 50s. Because why? They worked themselves to death. My grandfather passed away from cancer after working at Ford Motor Company in the plant and being exposed to all types of dangerous chemicals, fumes, whatever. They didn't have PPE like they do today. And my grandmother passed away walking down the street. She had a heart attack. She had worked her entire life. They had come from a plantation in Georgia, Sylvania. They had worked their entire lives, both of them, and moved to Michigan and continued to work. Continued to work until the day they died. So there was no rest for them, and that's why I don't know my grandparents. I was robbed. So when we think about the racial inequity, when we think about the long-lasting effects of being descendants of our enslaved ancestors, when we think about the alcoholism, the drug addiction, the gun violence that we're all suffering within our communities, when we think about the harm that this country has allowed to happen to Black people, the violence against Black bodies, we all need to be seeking justice. The same way Mamie Till sought justice every day for her son, Emmett Till. I don't know what else I want to say. I think that's all I want to say. Thank whomever has joined me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I just feel like we have work to do. And we can sit back and act like we're spoiled and we have these lovely, lovely lives that everybody is just so happy and thrilled. And, oh, my life is so, so good. But we need to be making this life that we are experiencing now better for the future generations. Thank y'all for joining me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Happy birthday, Emmett Till. And honor always to our ancestors.